Why it's vital to know the origin of the Bible? Because the Bible is the only book that is the most translated, the most studied, the most venerated, the bestseller of all time, and lastly but not least, it is the most influential and powerful book that has converted lives of billions from their natural, divine-given ways, cultural ways, to a single Greco Roman Euro culture. Because of these facts, since the Judeo-Christian Bible holds such a huge sway on earth, it has most likely percolated every human's thinking everywhere. So we need to cut off this massive influence by looking at it, and it is very important to discover who actually gave the first Bible to the world. These questions and many others will lead us to the issue of inspired delivery, whether the Bible was delivered directly, physically, or by any other manner. It is clear that all Western civilizations have been based and influenced by the Bible, so much so that today people think that morality, and they discuss issues of human morality, they think that it's not common sense but biblically based. This is how Christianity has made the modern world. Even atheists acknowledge the book as the most responsible for creating Western civilization today. Therefore, whoever delivered this book to humanity is controlling and has been controlling billions and shall continue to control billions, perhaps even yourself. This is why it is vital to know the origin of the Bible. We will be looking into this issue by answering a number of questions, maybe 5 or so questions. What does the official church history of the Bible teach? There are deadly caveats in the official narrative. Real facts on the source of the Bible. What race were these people who influenced the writing of the Bible and during that period? How can you diminish biblical influence in your life? The official church teaching concerning the Bible, which is believed and followed by billions of people, the official aspects and the origins of the Bible is that the foundations of all the Bibles are based on what is a book known as the Septuagint. They say that it is not Catholic, but it is a more accurate preservation of the Bible, coming from the original Hebrew via the Masoretic text. They compiled a book called the Septuagint, which is also titled LXX in Roman numeral 70. We know that the Old Testament was inaugurated and rewritten perhaps by Ezra, who came from Babylon. That's why you have a lot of Babylonian influence in the Bible. We want to look at the deadly caveats that are found in the Bible by asking questions like, did God inspire translators of the Septuagint to improve his own words as taught by many in Eastern Orthodox Church without errors or with errors? Does the Greek translation that gave birth to the Septuagint express the original teachings better than the original teachings themselves? Are all subsequent translations in the many languages that the Bible carry today still carry that original inspiration in exactly the same manner as the original? Let's look at this aspect, the deadly caveats in the official narrative. The early Greek translation of the Bible, the history that we are given, is that the influence of the Septuagint on the Bible translation, the Christian fathers down to the late 4th century AD regarded the Septuagint as the standard form of the Old Testament and seldom referred to the Hebrew. So that was their end point, never the Hebrew. The Septuagint, rather than the original Hebrew Bible, was the main basis for the Old Latin, the Coptic, the Ethiopic Bible, Armenian, Georgian, Slavonic, and some Arabic translations of the Bible. How did the Septuagint come about? The history that we are given, that we follow, is that it was created during the Alexandrian time, between 300 and 200 BCE, and it was written by Jewish scholars who first translated the Torah into Koine Greek in the 3rd century BCE. According to the record in the Talmud, Ptolemy, whose father incorporated a lot of our ancient ancestral belief system of Osiris and Apis, his son called upon the elders from the Hebrews for him the Torah of Moses, and this comes from the letter of Aristes. We look at that. The official line says the origin of the Septuagint is well known. Flavius Josephus records that Ptolemy Philadelphus, around 250 BCE, son of Ptolemy Soter, on whom Jesus is based, entered into negotiations with the Jewish high priest to obtain a Greek translation of the Torah for the Alexandrian library. But the only evidence for the Septuagint is the letter of Aristes. That is where we get a lot of caveats. And the summary is shown here is that the Septuagint 250 BCE, a supposed translation by the Jews of the Old Testament from Hebrew to Greek. The evidence then of this is the letter of Aristes that also gives another basis to Origen Hexplaca, which claims to copy the Septuagint. Let's continue and see that a letter of Aristes to Philocrates, his brother, which has been accepted but also debunked. This letter has now been almost universally acknowledged by scholars to be fake. Caveat number 1. The only evidence put thus far for the basis of all Bibles used today by all preachers, almost every preacher you can think of, arises from a Septuagint translation based on pseudographical document entitled the Letter of Aristes to Philocrates, which has been proved to be a forgery. Why was it made, this forgery? It was made to deceive people about the exact origin of the Greek translations of the Hebrew scriptures that were extant at the time this pseudographical letter was written. From the Encyclopedia Britannica, the following quotations are from the 1958 edition, volume 20, article Septuagint, page 335 to 336. The emphasis that you find here is mine. The Hebrew text from which the Septuagint translators worked was often divergent from that represented by the Masoretic text, but we need not assume that in cases of differences the Greek is to be feared. The Septuagint translators made some palpable mistakes. Their knowledge of Hebrew was often inadequate. They occasionally interpreted as well as translated, and they sometimes introduced local flavor. So the Bibles are based on this forgery, which has palpable mistakes and biases and interpretations instead of translations. This letter of Aristes is a forgery written by a Jew who pretended a Greek living more than 100 years earlier, who is likely this Jew. First, before we identify this Jew, we must take notice that the early church fathers and Josephus, who advocated the Septuagint, were just repeating their faith. Just like Christian pastors and Christians today repeat the same faith based on the Bible. Therefore, that is why it is critical to know the origin of the Bible. Step number 3, real facts on the source of the Bible. Yes, there were Greek translations of the Old Testament in Alexandria and perhaps everywhere in the world. Many were private ventures by different squabbling groups. By 40 AD, Philo, who was familiar with the Old Testament books in the Bible other than Esther, Ecclesiastes, Song of Solomon, and Daniel, is likely the man who worked with the Greek rulers to finalize the Septuagint. And also he would go further to write the letter of Aristes in order to give recognition and authority and approval to the Greek translations. Capture, that is very, very critical. This is not taught anywhere in public. It's known by scholars, academicians. Now, the key to this issue is that as late as 40 AD, 4 books of the Old Testament were still not yet available to Philo in the Greek language, 300 years after the Septuagint translation was supposedly made. And there is also the issue of dates and the times and the names of the authors given in the letter of Aristes. They are all Greeks. Philo, though ethnically a Judite, was philosophically a Greek. He was a prolific author. He strongly believed in allegorical interpretation of the Old Testament. His aim was to prove that the philosophy of the Greeks had in fact been anticipated by the Judahites This was how he could justify the Judahites embracing Hellenistic customs and ideas, just like Africans embracing Christianity today and justifying that it is the word of God. Same method. Philo was also heavily influenced by a belief in mysticism. He tried very hard to synthesize Hellenistic and Hebrew traditions, and Philo certainly had a motive for wanting to see Greek translation of the Hebrew scriptures find acceptance. He was like our modern scholars and pastors and preachers and imams and rabbis, black rabbis, just like same people who teach capitalism, Islam, democracy, Judaism. This is how it was done by our own people, but through a substitute race that we shall prove shortly. In his introduction to the Septuagint with Apocrypha, Greek and English, 1851, Sir Lancelot Brenton describes how some critical scholars have attempted to call the Septuagint by its real name, the Alexandrian text, but this name has never stuck. They used human ingenuity, deception, and tricks to compile a Bible upon which they put some divinity. The Bible is a Catholic book. The creation and compilation of the modern Bible was a long process and very complex one. But Greco-Roman church fathers sifted through numerous manuscripts by using several different historical, doctrinal, and theological criteria. Which books were to be kept and included in the canon, and which books were to be set aside. They established a canon of scriptures. It was not inspired. It is them that wrote that verse that the Bible is inspired to justify their canon. For all Christians, all roads truly leads to Rome. More about the Bible. The real facts now about the Bible. The King James Version translators knew that the Septuagint was corrupt. You can go to this website that we are showing here. It is clear that they did not mince their word. The preface to the 1611 edition says this about the Septuagint. It is certain that the translation was not sound and so perfect, but it needed in many places correction, and who had been so sufficient for this work as the apostles or apostolic men. That's their justification. It also says the authors were unknown of many subsequent editions. And this is what you are basing your spirituality on. How to diminish biblical influence in your life. Follow the evidence. Ignore what is wrong. You can also watch this video, notable differences between the Masoretic text and the Septuagint. And you find a lot of evidence and information from this video. If you look in the preface of all modern Bibles, you will probably find a reference to the Septuagint for short, or LXX for short, or 70 for short. The translators of all modern Bibles, including the New King James Version, use the Septuagint along with other texts in translating the Bible. They claim that the Septuagint contains true readings not found in the preserved Hebrew text. Thus, they give it great importance, yet it is suspicious and full of errors. Now, who were these people that translated and that were involved in these activities? It is what we call the substitute race. Please notice this. As the authentic real artifacts plainly tell us, the ancient Greek and Romans who crafted the Bible and participated in translating and transferring information from melanin-dominant human beings to Europeans were albino or were mulatto, mixed people. Alexander the Greek, the Macedonians, and many others in original artifacts are depicted as mulattoes. This is said to be the statue of Ptolemy I Soter. However, it bears no resemblance to Ptolemy Soter, who is here on the coins, depicted on the coins. This is outright forgery. That's how they do it. That's how you have your Bible. It came by forgery. These are the gold coins issued by Ptolemy to Delphus, commemorating the deification of his father Ptolemy I, who incorporated our spirituality into a book that gave birth to the Bible. Yeah, these are totally different people, not the same. These are mulattoes, not straightforward like that. How can you diminish biblical influence in your life? Is your culture from European traditions? Is your God European? Is your God Jewish or Arabic? What is your culture? Are your totems alive? Which festivals do you observe? What is your diet? What is your language? What is your preferred spirituality? Among many other traditional markers. If you want to continue in this upper mind, you have to connect with us on join@marifado.com, where we will help each other to experience and nurture effective cultural and spiritual congruence by causing the interaction with revered ancestors and righteous divinities. If you are interested in many of these matters, subscribe to our channel, Hamiti Iburu Ethics. You can also send your email to join@marifado.com. Till we meet again, reduce that influence that does not come from your ancestors and righteous divinities. That way, you will start to move towards thyself, not artificial being that is being crafted in you by Islam, Christianity, and Judaism. Till we meet again, Yohamaneja Topi, Tumizulukunkeni Munjakanja. Edupe, Siabonga, Tatenta, thank you, Henkos.